Oh, the
Yep, here we are.
so one player, keyboard, cursor joystick, Kempston joystick, interface 2, because it's a
Yeah.
specky, and there are
Definitely
no
not
specs.
definitely not playing this with keyboard, Carl, because no, I like the whole up, down, left, right paradigm. It's a wonderful invention of mankind.
So, okay, so what are you doing here? Tell me. Walk me through
So
this.
I am wandering through a maze collecting things for some reason or another. To unlock a seal on to reassemble 4 pieces of a treasure and unlock a sealed cave, I think. But, you know,
It is very colorful.
it is very colorful. So, I mean, the thing that always stands out when it comes to Ultimate games, Ashby Computer Graphics Ultimate, etc., is that they are pretty for the spectrum. It's incredible what they managed to do.
Yeah.
And, of course, good call on not giving the protagonist a color because, there's already enough color clash, unavoidable no matter how good you are. And at least that means that your character isn't constantly clashing with everything.
That is true. That is true. So okay, so how does it control? What's the feel of this game as you're playing it?
It's very fast, and I don't know if that's the emulation. I did do this on an emulator on my PC. It's very fast. It feels very much like we're always hurtling at warp speed. The other thing that I found out very quickly is there is no such thing as attacking up or down. Like, you can't, when you're moving up and you hit the attack button, it doesn't mean your sword thrusts up. Your sword only thrusts left or right, which is a bit of an annoyance. You can see me getting beat up a bit here.
Yeah. So okay, so yeah. Now the elephant in the room obviously is the legendary supposed comparison between this and Zelda.
So I see why some people make that comparison. You do have swords, you do have snakes, you do have the natives or whatever they are that act a lot like the Dark Nuts in Zelda, but honestly, I don't think so. Only for one reason and one reason only. There's nothing in this really that isn't also that is in Zelda that isn't also in Tower of Druaga, which I really feel like was one of the prime influences on The Legend of Zelda.
Yeah. Now, what was the release date on Tower of Druaga?
So that's the other thing that I was wondering is, could the Stampers have seen Druaga because they were in the arcade industry first and they kept up on the arcade industry? Near as I can tell, these games were released at almost the same time. Reviews for Sabre Wulf start showing up in like July of '84. Druaga came out in June of '84. So I don't think those two games influenced each other.
Okay. Well, I mean, the first review I've seen so far of this game is, well, for the episode we're talking about, and it's for an August issue, but it's an August issue of a weekly.
Right.
So, dates for everything else can vary. But yeah, if Druaga, but now, is that the Japanese release of Druaga, or is it
Right.
a
I have no
Western
idea. I have no idea
release?
what might have come west. But the point is, there's no way that there was any, cross pollination there. I don't think. I mean, clearly this has to take some from Adventure. I mean, the way it's set up is on the 2600. I mean, because
Yeah, yeah.
the way these mazes are set up are very Adventure like, just with more interesting and colorful graphics, and obviously there are more enemies as well. But
Yeah.
uh, I feel like Adventure had to have been an influence on this. But yeah, you can see there's a native. You can't really attack them. It just changes direction. But the Knights in Druaga work similarly to the Dark Nuts as well. So, like, I get it, but I don't imagine that there's really an influence here on Zelda. I think it's Druaga rather than this.
Now, if you take this together with Attic Attack, which you've also played for 7 minutes in heaven.
Yes.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, cross-pollination. Go check that video out.
Indeed. And real fast, I will answer your question, but I did notice, and again, I don't know if this is emulation or just, the way it normally was, but I noticed that I could hold down the fire button and would constantly stabby. And so that made navigating enemies a lot easier because I just held down the button and started constantly stabby. Also, I did notice that
system. Yeah.
Yes. I also did notice that the flowers give you effects. They took away use of my sword, so I was afraid that they were harmful in some way. I looked it up afterwards, and it turns out that some of them are harmful, some of them are helpful. But I started avoiding flowers at all times after a couple of runs here because I was afraid they might be doing bad things to me. So gotcha. Yes, go back to your question about Attic Attack and Sabre in toto.
Yeah, so because as far as I understand it, the Stampers do basically show off their existing games to Nintendo before they become a licensee in 85 is when they get their license, when they start making NES titles.
Yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah, it's not getting a license, it's getting development, kind of
development tools.
Kits.
Yeah. So this would have been one of the games, and Attic Attack. So, and Zelda comes out in 87?
86. It was 87 in the US, I think, but 86 in Japan.
Gotcha. So, if taking those two games together, do we see some DNA then?
I mean, possibly. So there's definitely the question of, did Miyamoto see these games? And he might have, for reasons you said. He might have. I talked about our Attic Attack episode. It feels like there's a visual influence there because they both came up with such an interesting perspective for displaying the dungeons and the doors to other rooms of the dungeons that you have to wonder. I see that more than I see much DNA from this one because, like I said, I get where the DNA is sword, running around in the woods, and some of the enemies have somewhat similar behaviors, but it's just, other than the jungle part of that, it feels like that's all in Druaga as well, and that was definitely an influence. So it's a little muddled in my opinion, but I can certainly see why the Stampers would cheekily call Zelda Miyamoto's Sabre Wulf clone, because you can see some similarities.
Okay, very cool. And unless Miyamoto is about to give an interview going into details on this as to what he saw when, we will have to leave the speculation there. Now, we didn't really talk about it much, but what did you think of this?
Look, I mean, I get that it's graphically impressive. And I get that if you were, an English lad in 1984 and all you'd ever had were, maybe had fooled around with a BBC Micro at school, and maybe you had a ZX80 or ZX81 before you picked up your Speccy. I understand how, if that's all you ever had, this game is amazing. It's mind-blowing compared to a lot of what came out before. But it doesn't impress me really as a game, I have to say. I was much more impressed, more cross-pollination, with Manic Miner as a game when we played that one, because I was impressed not just with the visual and presentation, but also the feel of it. The feel of the jump in that game was very nice. The feel of controlling this was not very nice for me. It felt way too fast in terms of the movement. It felt like the enemy spawning was just so random and arbitrary, and until I figured out I could just hold down the fire button, it felt like timing the sword swipes to kill enemies was very frustrating. So I get the reputation for the graphics, but not entirely my cup of tea as a game.
As someone who did not spend a tremendous amount of time with this, but I did try to get into it years ago, I completely concur. It suffers from so many of the specky problems. The fact that there's there's no sprite hardware, so everything is just sort of generated on the screen, and it feels jumpy, it feels imprecise. And the fact that they just have stuff spawning constantly, there's no rhyme or reason. It never feels like a lived-in space, like a realistic space or a predictable space. And it's a similar problem to Attic Attack. I mean, that has a map, but the stuff just keeps showing up constantly and randomly. So
exactly.
Okay. So, early rare at its finest. And, well, soon we'll be seeing their games for LJN. So, woohoo! Okay, let's get back to the episode.